So many people have been coming to me lately asking me, Amy, what do I do about my content? I haven't been growing. Does Instagram even work anymore? The algorithm changed again. And so today's episode is going to be all about the 3 types of content you need in order to grow and actually sell through your online channel. And I'm going to be using Instagram as an example, as that is actually my own primary channel. Hello, and welcome to Fail to Win, a show where we love to make mistakes and learn from them so you can turn your passion into profits and live life on your own terms. I'm Amy van der Putten from FastForwardAmy, your host and coach, and I'll bring you a new episode with simple strategies every Tuesday. So for the longest time, my own FastForwardAmy Instagram account wasn't actually meant to be like my growth account, my growth channel, because I had a lot of other stuff happening. But this year, I decided to start taking a few things more seriously and step into even more authority, thought leadership, and I've started growing my account again. By the time you hear this episode, my account will be over 70,000 followers, and I have been on Instagram for a while. And I can say throughout every single algorithm change or adding reels, and then before that, the first stories came up, no matter what is actually changing in the algorithm, what's really important is that you understand that there's an ABC to content, and the ABC of content is what I'm going to be teaching you today. So why does this matter for you, and what are you maybe struggling with? Maybe you fall into one of the following categories. Wow. Okay. So maybe you see that you have views on your videos. Maybe you've been pushing out content, but you don't really see any followers coming in from those views. This might mean that you are missing authority in your account, or it might be that you are missing some conversion, what's happening after people watch the content. On the other hand, maybe you say, hey, I do have followers, but I just, I don't get any sales in, and I post and I have a good connection. At least I think so, but I'm not getting any followers in. That means you're missing conversion. And the third thing that might be happening is that you say, okay, I do get some sales, it does help me, but it's just like very limited. I feel like it's warm audience only. Maybe you're starting to feel like your pool of people is starting to get dried up. And here what we're going to be seeing is that you probably lack attraction. So what we are going to do today is we're going to build a really tiny content system for you where we're going to be using the ABC of content, which is attract, build trust, and convert. And I'm going to just quickly walk you through the ABC of content in terms of Instagram in today's day and age and what you need to be focusing on. And at the end of the episode, I'm also going to give you a couple of percentages, like, okay, depending on which phase you're in terms of your business, we're going to look at how much should you be posting of which type of content. So the A of the ABC of content is attraction content. And attraction content is either, if you've been growing a personal brand for a long time, this might either be your easiest or your hardest type of content to make. Honestly, I think all of these types of content are hard to make for people, but most people, when they're starting their business, they start creating posts about, their web shop, or they start feeling comfortable about selling. But then at a certain point, they kind of come to me and they're kind of like, hello, I have no new leads. And this is where attraction content comes in. I do see a lot of big personal brands who are really good at this, but who then forget to sell. So I recently watched an influencer who has over 1 million followers, who's super popular, launch her own brand. And I saw her launching the brand and I was like, this is not converting well, because you are used to attracting people, but you don't know how to actually convert them to a sale. So that's very interesting always for me to watch, because it's not because you have a lot of followers or a lot of views that you are actually going to be getting in a lot of sales, because no one can do without the ABC. But there is one exception, and I'll kind of like disclaim that to you at the end, because there is a little bit of a treat in this system. You can use the A and the C if you want. You can sometimes skip the B, but only if your A is really, really good. Before you start thinking we're in some kind of weird physics or chemistry class, we're just going to dive into content. Okay, so type 1 is attraction content. This is the A. And our goal is to reach new people, and we want to kind of earn the follow. So I've been growing consistently over 100 followers a day in the past few weeks. Some days go up to 500 new followers. And what we want to do is we want to push out content that makes people stop the scroll, read what you're posting, and you want them to kind of think like, that's me, this is for me, I want more of this. And so really good formats to increase your follows could be reels that get pushed out. It's not because you're making a reel that is gonna get pushed out to new people, but you can make reels. For example, what's been working really well for me is not just posting reels on my feed, but posting trial reels, and I've been getting a ton of followers from that. You can write really punchy carousels. I made a carousel a couple of weeks ago about like things my trust fund pays for. And it was none of those things were actually paid by a trust fund. I don't have a trust fund, but it was fairly controversial. You can use really short hooks, play into trends. What I've been seeing works really well currently to grow your account is like funny content, but not all of us are funny. But so trends, things that are very, very niche aligned, this could work well to grow your account. In terms of angles for your content, think of mistakes, myths, red flags, swaps, don't do this, and a bit of contrarian thinking. So the quick test that you want to do for attraction content is, would a stranger care within 3 seconds of seeing your video? So what's been working really well for me is making videos about, not necessarily about straight up business content, but about time. Because what I sell isn't necessarily money. It's not necessarily business. What I'm actually selling is you being in charge of your life and being able to build a freedom-based, scalable business. So I've been going really high to the top of my funnel and thinking, okay, so my ideal client is someone who doesn't want to die with regrets. How do we reverse engineer that into top of funnel content? So what you want to do mainly here is you want to be able to stop the scroll. And what you want to think about is, would someone who doesn't know me or my brand actually stop the scroll and care? That's just the first thing you need to think about. This is the number one thing people are always complaining about. They're like, oh, I'm posting reels, but I'm not getting any new people into my audience. This is often because your content is too branded and it's missing a lot of context. So context, like if there's one thing you need to add to your videos, it's context, namely making your hooks better. Maybe you're posting something, but no one knows why they would listen to you because you're lacking authority in the way you're presenting your hook or your angle. Maybe your layout is very algorithm unfriendly. I see this with a lot of beginners. They'll make these videos in Canva. For starters, if I wanted to go viral on Instagram, I would make my content in Instagram or in Edits, because Edits is an app owned by Instagram. And you really want to make sure that, you want to pop out and be like, this is my account. But at the same time, you don't want to kick the algorithm. So you kind of want to be algorithm friendly with your layout. Because imagine everyone is going viral with these, the Twitter style posts. I know it's not Twitter anymore, but the quotes where you see a little, the face of someone and then the quote post in a very specific angle. What I'll see a bunch of my clients doing is like, oh, I like that, but let me make the background red. If the algorithm already knows the niche and knows which formats of content perform like those quotes, it's not going to love that all of a sudden it's like fully red background. That doesn't work. So tweak it to make it your own style, tone of voice, but don't go overboard in terms of branding stuff, because it might really block your attraction. It doesn't mean that you can't brand stuff, and the stronger your brand is, the easier this is going to get. But in the beginning, focus more on your copy, and that's what's going to do the biggest thing. So if we're thinking of, your funnel and you want to grow your account, the next step is obviously someone does watch your video. Maybe in the caption, it does say, follow Fast Forward Amy. They might click through and then they visit your profile and they're like, oh, this is not for me. It's important that your profile picture appeals to them, that your bio is actually something that would attract new people. I recently changed my bio. This is one of those things that helped me to actually turn the leads into people who stick with me on my profile, because I tweaked a couple of things. My bio was only about money, and I now wrote something about like for women who deserve more or who want more. And I thought it was a bit cheesy, but it's actually been working really well because, again, people really relate to how I positioned it a bit more top of funnel. And the main thing here that I'm always telling my clients is, again, what I already said is it clear what you are doing, what you're offering for someone who doesn't know who you are yet? And often we are so deep into, my friend Lucy said this a few weeks ago, when you're in the bottle, you can't read the label. So the best thing you can do is actually, if you want to test your content, currently there's a feature on Instagram, and I don't know how long it's going to be up for anymore, but there's a feature and it's called trial reels. So when you post trial reels, they're going to get automatically pushed out to a new audience. And that means that when you are, let's say you're creating content, I mean, just post on your account. But what I'm also doing is I'm posting separate, just like not the same content to test it out, but literally like separate content that I want to push out to an audience who doesn't know me. And I'm posting everything as trial reels to get that new audience to visit my profile. So I'm posting literally 5 to 10 trial reels a day. We're growing from that, and that might seem a bit much, but remember, a big part of my business is Instagram. If I would have to pay for ads that would give me that amount of traffic, I would have to pay a lot of money. And this is actually costing me a lot less time because we're not necessarily putting out 10 new videos a day. We're just tweaking the videos in edits and just pushing out variations, and we're testing out hooks. We're testing out different B-roll clips, and we're seeing what works. That drives a lot of people to my account. If you want to know more about trial reels, by the way, I've been considering making something about that. So I might release it, but before I release that, I have already made a different resource. And it's a resource with like 50 things that you can do to grow your account. And so if you are currently posting on Instagram, you are using Instagram to grow your business, I would love to give this list to you. It's 50 actions you can, apply to your Instagram account, to everything you're doing to your posts that will actually help you grow your account. And trial reels is obviously one of them. All you have to do is go to the link in the description of this episode. Or if you're on Instagram currently, maybe you're walking around or something, just message me Insta50. So Insta from Instagram and then 50, and I'll send you the checklist. These are 50 things you can just like print it out, get started, and you're going to immediately see that your account is going to start growing again. So once you have new people walking in on your profile, then what happens is, well, you can become a really famous brand, but it's not because people walk in on your profile that they will actually buy from you. So this is where the second type of content becomes really important. And this is the B of the ABC. This is where we build trust. And it's not just trust that we're building, or at least it is trust, maybe also some desire that we start building. But what I would say here is this is what we call our authority content or our nurture content, depending on how you look at it. Our goal now is that when people have arrived on our profile, we now start trusting, building. I don't know why. This is hard for me to explain. Choosing my words. So I think this is from enthusiasm. I love talking about content. I could do it all day, but okay, reset. Let's go. So our goal is to build trust, but not just trust. We want to build belief. We want to build belief that it's also possible for them. And we kind of want to create a vibe where your audience is like, oh my God, she gets me. So what we want to do here is we want to reduce doubt. We want to increase the certainty that you are the person for them. So this is where you get to really share behind the scenes thinking. This is what we call our thought leadership content. This could also be contrarian posts like what we talked about in the A content, but here we're already assuming our audience is a bit more interested in us. We can share some behind the scenes stuff. We can talk about case studies that we've done. This is where teaching and frameworks work a lot better. And if you want to look at angles of like what type of content are you making here, how you think is really applicable here, your method, the way you teach, patterns you see in clients, before and afters, audits. So if you look at trust building content or nurture content, if you look at my podcast, for example, my podcast is this. So my podcast isn't made to attract new people, but it is made that when someone new enters my world and they start listening to my podcast, that is actually going to get them to trust me. Because, maybe not after this episode, after I tripped over my words a couple of times, but if I don't just like fully mess up the content and they like literally the concepts that I'm teaching and they start binging my podcast, like my friend Katie just did it. Katie was already my friend. She already likes me, but she didn't know I had a podcast and she started listening and she's like, I'm listening all the time. I love your podcast. Imagine Katie didn't know me, but she'd met me at an event or maybe just followed me on Instagram. If she would have then started listening to my podcast, that podcast might have made her decide like, this is the person I want to learn from. So that's what you want to be creating. So the quick test here is not, does it stop the scroll? Although obviously your headlines and your covers of carousels and stuff, like they should always stop the scroll. Your hooks are really important. But what you want to accomplish here is, does this make your audience trust you more after consuming it? So obviously you do not want it to suck. So if you look at just generally my podcast titles, this is a good example of the type of content you can make here. Okay, so now we've attracted new people. We've gotten them on our profile. We have made sure that they converted into followers, and now we kind of like want to warm them up. So this is also why if you send the welcome message to new followers, don't immediately send them a pitch. Someone who's new isn't going to immediately buy from you. That would be like asking someone to marry you on the first date. That's weird. But maybe if you have a podcast or you have a really good resource, you could send them that resource for free, and that would then warm them up to become a super fan. And this is when we get to number 3. This is the C of the ABC, and this is your conversion content. So we want to turn that interest and that trust and that attention into action, because we do need to sell, because we want to pay our bills. So what we want to do here is we want to give people the next step. We want to handle objections, and the formats that you can use here are, posts with a really clear call to action, a story that's actually selling something with an offer, talking about frequently asked questions, objections, giving some social proof with some context. So for example, for me this week, I'll start promoting my mastermind. I'll lead with social proof of my client, and then I'll talk about the venue I'm booking for my mastermind retreat, and then I'll put an apply here button and I'll put that on my stories. And this works really well. Now, someone who doesn't know me yet wouldn't watch my stories. People who are watching my stories are already a bit more warm, but if I wanted to preload my launch, I would spend some time the months before to actually make content that attracts new potential leads for my mastermind, to then get them in there. And I would probably also make sure that people buy maybe some of my smaller offers. So the angle bank here is, or the angles you take for this content is like, who is it for? What do you get? How does it work? What will change? Why is now the right moment? Proof that it can work for you. So the quick check here, just like we had, for the A, does it stop the scroll? For the B, we had the trust check. Here is there an obvious next step? And this is where I see it just like exploding into wrongness so often. My team will ask me for audits of our clients. So I have a membership. I have over 400 active clients that we're currently coaching. I have people anywhere from paying me $97 a month to literally like a couple of thousand a month to get coached by me and my team. And what happens is so often people will put up their content or their profile for review. And so when someone does this and I review it or my team reviews it, if they haven't posted in the last 2 weeks, that's the first red flag. We're like, well, if we wouldn't be active online, imagine you're not running ads, you're not posting, you're not doing anything. Do you think our sales would be great? No. So that's like the first red flag, is if you're inconsistent. But the second red flag is often, and I just had this with a client who's literally in a 40K program, and she said, I'm posting so much, but I'm not converting. So I told her like, okay, let me review your content. And I saw that she was posting, but her call to actions were really shit, if I'm being honest. She actually wasn't saying any call to actions. She was just like grabbing attention and just like leaving it open, like, oh yeah, maybe shoot me a DM if you're interested. No clear call to action, no clear button, no clear next step. It was all just like very open-ended. But imagine you're in, you're going to a clothing store, you're trying on a bunch of outfits, and you're like, yeah, this outfit makes me look cool. I'd love this. And you want to go and check out and pay for it. And you cannot find the cash register. At a certain point, you would just give up and just leave, right? This is what happens with a lot of people's social content, is because their call to actions are not clear enough and are not action oriented enough. They're actually just simply not selling. So this is the ABC. And in terms of importance, I would say everyone has an audience. So I would use the C from the get-go. I would always be selling. Literally, even if you have 0 followers on Instagram, you might have people on Facebook, you might have people in your contacts list on your phone. Just always be selling is something I would always recommend, because you kind of also have to become brave enough to push the call to action. And maybe in the beginning, the call to action is follow my profile, and you're not actually selling, but you are selling action, right? Maybe you have a personal account and you want to build up your new brand account. This is what I saw with that influencer I mentioned. It's like she's posting, but she's trying to make it really cool, and she's not asking for the sale. She's not asking for the click. She's not asking for the follow. And I'm like, girl, just announce your new brand and say, follow the account, click here. Just like be really, really intentional with what you want your audience to do. That's going to work much better. So I would say always be converting. And then remember at the beginning of the video, I said there is an exception where you don't need the ABC. So if you get really good at attraction content and your attraction content contains storytelling, is very visual, is very consistent, you can just simply by showing up that well, you can actually build enough trust innately so that you can convert. So you can do the A and the C. I've helped clients 10x their business, not by making newsletters or podcasts. We didn't do any of that, but we just really nailed their attraction content. And we made sure that their attraction content is not just good to attract new people, but also immediately converts people towards lead magnets or to the bottom, because it's just that good and that inherently just like applicable to everyone. So if you look at different niches, for example, health, everyone wants recipes, everyone wants to feel good. Relationships, everyone wants to feel reconnected with their spouse and in love. So those are all types of content that you could make that could both attract new people, get forwarded, shared, reposted, all of that. But that could also really easily convert into the next step because the pain is really high and people are already paying attention and they want more at the moment that they are watching your content. Me personally, I've spent a lot of my time also creating nurture content, building up authority, and I'm currently now spending more time on attraction content, which is nice because now when new people walk in, I can send them to all of my podcasts. But if you're running low on time, I would say make sure you have something that you're converting to, and then make sure you are actually attracting people. And when you've nailed a rhythm for that, then start adding in the nurture and the authority layer. But hopefully that will trickle down from your attraction content. So if you want to look at a content mix here and what is like the rule, if you're in a growth phase and you're currently looking to, really grow your account, maybe you're in the lead gen phase for a next launch or something, these percentages are not like hard rules. I'm just going to give you an indication. We want to make sure that like 50% of your content is attraction. And for most people, they're flipping the script. They're spending way too little time on attraction and then spend the rest of the 50% on authority and conversion. If you're in a sales phase ratio, which often happens, which is fine, maybe do 30, 30, 40. So like 30% attraction, 30% authority, 40% conversion in a hard push. But remember two things. If you're always selling, there's not going to be an audience to sell to after a while. That's the first thing. The second thing you want to remember is if you are skipping conversion content and you are too afraid to ask for the sale, you're basically just offering free entertainment, and that is actually not going to pay your bills. Okay, so remember here, I made that list of the 50 50 marketing actions you can apply to your Instagram account. Go and grab that in the description of this episode. And before we close up, I just kind of want to give you a little recap of this episode. And I know it can be overwhelming, but just think that sometimes one piece of content can get you hundreds or thousands of new followers. Just make sure that you then also nurture those people so that they come and buy something from you and that you just don't have a one-hit wonder and then just like never show up again. Because that's why I am a fan of the B layer, because sometimes you don't have the brain space to work on the growth, but at least you're still showing up, and all of your existing audience, they will just always remember that you are very consistent and trustworthy so that when you do launch something, they are going to be ready to buy from you. So attraction gets you seen, authority gets you trusted, conversion gets you paid. Don't forget, whenever you're stuck, look at the ABC of your content and just like take it from there. And if you have any questions, let me know. I'd love it if you would follow the podcast. I'm really spending I'm spending time on inviting guests. There are going to be some really cool episodes coming up with some high-powered female guests that are going to blow your mind. So hit the follow and subscribe button, and then I will talk to you next week, Tuesday. Bye. You're probably listening to the Fail to Win podcast because you want to get better at business, marketing, and sales. And you want to pick up some new knowledge along the way as you are working out, driving, walking. And I so appreciate that you are here. But I have a little but, because let's be honest. Free knowledge is good, but it won't actually always get you to implement stuff because most entrepreneurs already know what they should be doing. They know they need to show up more visibly. They know that they need to create content consistently instead of sporadically. They know that they need to step into their power and their authority, but there is often such a big gap between knowing and doing. So if you're finding yourself starting from scratch with your content every single week, trying to figure out what to post, I can kind of guess what happens. On Monday, you post, you're so motivated. On Tuesday, you post. Then on Wednesday, something happens. And by Friday evening, you realize, shit, I forgot to post the rest of the week. How did this happen? Because I was so motivated. And I know that feeling because I used to do everything on motivation. And I thought if I can just stay motivated, everything is going to work out. With my fitness, I would get really motivated and think this is the year I'm going to make shit happen. And then I would fall off track. And then with my content, I would get such great ideas, spend way too much time on creating them. And then after a few weeks, I would notice like, oh no, I forgot to continue with my ideas. And this is when I realized that nothing basically sticks for me unless I build a system. And so many of my clients report the same thing. So maybe if you're currently finding yourself in this position with your leads and your posts and your sales, you are finding that every time you do a launch, you notice that you didn't have enough leads. Or maybe you only show up when you're selling. And this is exactly how my Authority Accelerator was born and how I built it for my clients. Because inside of the Authority Accelerator, we use my exact content system that I use to create content once a week or once a month, most often, where we build an entire content machine. You don't need a team. You don't need expensive ads. You don't need expensive funnels and complicated stuff. No random tactics. But you just need a content creation system that turns you and your whole brand into a marketing machine that brings in followers, leads, and clients on autopilot 24/7, even when you aren't online and you're actually offline most of the time, because life is too short to be posting to Instagram stories when you're on the couch with your partner and they're actually really craving your attention. If you're interested in this program, go to fastforwardamy.com/accelerator or simply click on the link in the description of this episode or just message me on Instagram, message me accelerate on Instagram, and I'll see you inside of the accelerator.